Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It is one day since Inter Miami's 4-1 beating of the New York Red Bulls. Inter Miami back to winning ways after a tough stretch. They turn over the month on the calendar, and certainly things look a lot better this month than they did last. 4-1 victory. I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How are you feeling on this lovely Sunday afternoon?
It feels great to be back to winning ways. It's been a while since Inter Miami has such a decisive win in its arsenal. So I'm glad that happened yesterday. New York Red Bulls just seems to be one of those opponents where we either lose to them 6-0 or we win against them by a ton of goals. So I'm glad yesterday we actually showed up. A good performance from the team overall. I don't know how much more you were convinced by Javier Mascherano, whether your questions and concerns have been dispelled after yesterday's performance, but here we are, one victory. I think we need at least 10 more before we can actually start feeling good about a CONCACAF Champions Cup exit, if we ever feel good about it. I'm doing well. It's May 4th, as you just reminded me off camera. So May the 4th be with you, my friend, and happy Star Wars Day.
Yes, to all those who celebrate. I did hear that the movie from 20 years ago has got like a re-release and is doing really good. So
Yeah.
shows that the old ones are timeless in some ways. Speaking of timeless, Lionel Messi gets on the scoreboard. Luis Suárez gets on the scoreboard. Fafa Picault, who's 33, gets on the scoreboard. So a couple of our 30-plus-year-olds contributing to a 4-1 victory for Inter Miami. Let's start with some injury news. Tadeo Allende picked up a knock, and that's why he left the game at halftime. Javier Mascherano did make that announcement after the game in his post-game press conference. We're not exactly sure what happened. We're not exactly sure how long he'll be out or if he'll be out if he'll miss any time. But he did come out injured, and so we saw that change at halftime, not for nothing. Allende with a little bit of a knock, and I think we should at least mention that.
Yeah, honestly, a big loss again if he's out for a long time because he was on fire before his injury and then he came back and he sort of looked a little bit iffy. He hasn't contributed as many goals, but I don't think we can afford to lose too many people in our front line because the kind of options that he presents there is just it's unique and we don't necessarily have that with anybody else. And if Allende sits out, then we're probably going to have to play Benha more, Fafa Picault more, but none of them can do the job that he does. So hopefully it's not for long and it's just precautionary. We'll see what happens with his injury though.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you consider Robert Taylor and Julian Gressel no longer options for this team. The depth is a little bit of a concern. Vice Rosa says in the chat that Baltasar was seen in training, so maybe he becomes a reinforcement that Inter Miami can rely on over the next couple days. Because at this point, he still may be just a myth as far as Inter Miami fans are concerned. That's it. I mean, the transfer window is closed. I know that at the end of this month, there will be a brief window for Club World Cup teams to potentially add players. And so Inter Miami could make a move or bring in a player at the beginning of June. But for now, this is the roster. We'll get, hopefully, Baltasar soon. David Ruiz could return soon. But other than that, we're looking at a pretty healthy roster. And that's got to feel good if you aren't losing players as soon as you get healthy, like Tadeo Allende last night. So hopefully he's okay. Hopefully he can be a factor next weekend, and Inter Miami doesn't feel like they're losing a huge piece when he goes out.
I don't even know what Baltazar Rodriguez looks like, honestly. I'm just waiting for him to show up and actually be part of the matchday squad because it's been forever since we signed him, hasn't it?
It's been forever since we first got linked to him, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We have a graphic made up for him, and it's based on a picture of him from his time as an Argent, like with Racing Club, and he looks very young. He's kind of a baby face, just like Toto Aviles had when he first arrived. But it wouldn't surprise me that by the time he actually gets to the field for Inter Miami, if he's matured and he looks much different than he did when he first arrived. Because
Probably
that's
has a beard, grown out his hair, maybe an earring or two. Who knows?
Exactly. So with that said, let's talk about the game, because this was a big one for Inter Miami, not just from certainly not from a stakes perspective, but from a mentality perspective. I think we were pretty critical of the coaching staff going into this game. Friday night we had a long 2-hour conversation, which I think made me feel a lot better. I think I got a lot of things off my chest, and I think that we got a better insight into what's going on with this coaching staff. And so we were going into Wednesday night's game thinking, okay, is this a major change, or is this going to be he thinks everything's fine? And I think that's going to be the theme of this episode. Was it a major change? Are things fine? Are things still not fine? And we somehow just got a 4-1 victory anyways. So I want to start in the pregame and kind of bring us back to that mood. And I'll bring up the starting lineup from yesterday. And I want to get your thoughts now that we've seen the 90 minutes. What do you think of this starting 11? We weren't fans of it. We were pretty down on both the decisions made in this starting 11 going into the game, and also, personnel and what it potentially meant about the mindset of this team going into this game. So now that we've seen it, what do you think?
Honestly, this lineup on its given day, can actually beat any team in the MLS. But at the same time, this same lineup can potentially have a very poor performance as well, both in defense, maybe in offense as well. It's not reliably consistent. And I think the biggest issue you and I both have with this is that it could go either ways. This lineup does not ensure sufficiently or even decisively whether Inter Miami can beat the New York Red Bulls. So going into this game, I think my idea was seeing this lineup that yes, there's enough in this starting 11 that can get us a victory, but it could also go the other way around where New York Red Bulls absolutely decimate us. I wasn't particularly happy with Lujan's selection, and we've talked a lot about this, but it might just be worth reiterating that to drive the point home. We have players like David Martinez and Toto Aviles who are sitting on the bench on ice, haven't played that many minutes, need to be utilized because they're going to be an integral part of this full season. And you want them to get minutes in their legs so that they're fresh. When there's an injury to one of our starting centre backs, you want to give them those opportunities. This was the perfect game for us to sit Allen out, sit Lujan out, and try Aviles and Martinez. So I was very disappointed that neither of them got any minutes. And then Chelo Wiegand, I think it was more or less understandable why he's starting, because you made a really good point about how Javier Mascherano is going to try and go out and win this game, and he's going to put players on that he trusts the most. And it's clear at this point in time that the right back that Javier Mascherano trusts the most is Chelo Wiegand and not Ian Frey. So disappointing on a personal level, but Chelo had a really good performance yesterday, so you can't really complain with that. I was not super pleased with this lineup, and it brought me down a little bit because it gives me a lot of insight into Javier Mascherano's thinking and what he thinks about this roster as a whole. But again, it's more than sufficient to go out and deal with New York Red Bulls, and we showed that yesterday.
So here are the changes that he made. He went with Fafa Picault instead of Telasco Segovia. He goes with Yannick Bright instead of Federico Redondo, and he goes with Lujan instead of Maxi Falcone. Now, Maxi Falcone started last weekend, so I think it was fair to expect him to get a rest after playing 3 games in 7 days. Not a surprise that he doesn't start. Yannick Bright and Federico Redondo have been rotating every game, and I don't think we're upset that they're rotating. I think we're upset that they're rotating in a way that Redondo has gotten the more important games over the last 2 weeks. I thought clearly this New York Red Bulls game, clearly last week's FC Dallas game were far less important. And for some reason, we started Yannick Bright in those 2 games, and Federico Redondo got the Champions Cup semifinal games. And then Fafa Picault, that is really the one change that I think is a surprise. They were due for some rotation, but I don't think that was the most easy to predict. But I look at this and I think if Inter Miami won on Wednesday night, I think we would have gotten the same 11. And so I just want to start right off the bat and say, like, I wanted to see some changes, and we didn't. I don't think we got changes. I think Lujan was penciled in to replace Maxi Falcone for this game because Falcone had started 3 straight. I thought Bright was going to start this weekend no matter what the result was on Wednesday night. And so, Fafa Picault getting a start, fine. I mean, I think Segovia can use some more rotation. And so for me, this feels like nothing that happened on Wednesday affected the game planning or lineup going into tonight. And that's pretty disappointing for a team that's gone 7 games, 8 games, really struggling to score goals. And I didn't think what we saw in this game, at least for the first hour, changed my opinion very much on this team, even though they did put up 3 goals in that period of time.
But why do you think he's putting out Gonzalo Lujan when, okay, you want to give
I
Maxi
think he
Falcone
thinks
a
he's better.
rest? Better than Toto Aviles and David Martinez?
I think he thinks that. Now, it wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be David Martinez because Martinez is a left-sided player, and so if you're going to start Allen, you're not going to start Allen and David Martinez. They're both left-sided center backs. But yeah, as far as Toto, I think he thinks Lujan is better than Toto. I think he thinks Lujan is better than Ian Frey. I think he thinks so. It's like it's pretty disappointing, but I think that's what he thinks, and it goes back to what we were talking about on Friday night, where I don't think he understands how to evaluate his players particularly well. But we saw on Wednesday night when he needed to make a substitution for Maxi Falcone, he went with Lujan over Toto Avila. So even in the biggest moments, he thought Lujan was the right choice. So I don't think this represents much change from him, if I'm being totally honest with you.
Yeah,
And
I
think
agree with you.
I
I
wanted to
think
preface with that.
no, that I think is a good asterisk at the start of this episode. I don't think Javier Mascherano made decisions with the starting 11 at least that made me think he's kind of understood how to use the squad. I still think he's on the same track, and I don't know how positive that is going into the next few games. This was a game where it worked out for us, but I want to see more changes, and I want to see more utilization of the full squad from Javier Mascherano. Also, happy birthday to Gabriella.
Yeah, Gabriella says it's her birthday today, so happy birthday to you. Yeah, nice gift yesterday, and hopefully you're having a wonderful day. And thank you for spending a little bit of it with us. Okay, let's get into it. 9th minute, Tadeo Allende sort of pressures Wilkie Carmona up high and forces Carmona to have a bad clearance. It goes straight to Cello. Cello puts a cross into the box. It deflects off the top of Suarez's head. And he goes straight to Fafa Picault, sort of towards the back post, and he puts it in. Let's start there because one of the things we've been consistently complaining about is not enough width. And here it is, the first cross of the game. The first time they're going to get high and with really the whole roster get high. And they put in a cross and it turns into a goal. So that was nice.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was a physical conscious effort by this team to utilize the spaces in the wide channels. I think they saw the space and were able to use it this time around. But if New York Red Bull cut down those spaces, I don't think this team would have tried to create the space on the wide side and the width on that pitch by themselves. They weren't willing to manufacture that. I think they did that because it was available and they saw space. So someone like Chelo Wigan ran into it. A really good cross by him, by the way.
Yeah, it was happenstance. I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word. Exactly.
They put in a cross, it kind of gets deflected, and Tadeo Allende goes and chases Carmona out into the corner, and instead of just booting it far, he kind of just boots it forward. It's right to Cello, and Cello's wide open. And by the way, if you're a professional fullback, if you're wide open, it should be pretty easy to put in a really nice cross. He does, and it turns into a goal, and I just want to say, that will be there for them every single game from now on, until they use it and abuse it to death, that teams are forced to go cover it. And then when they do that, the middle will open and Lionel Messi will be phenomenal and Suarez will be phenomenal again. So that's what they need to do. But I guess my concern is it felt more happenstance than game plan.
Exactly.
Game planned into the offense. So very similar moment in the 30th minute, a short corner. Inter Miami does earn a corner. Messi goes short. Whatever they were trying to do, it felt like it didn't work because they just kind of cycle it all the way around. Maybe that's exactly what they wanted to do. But ultimately, it gets to Fafa Picault on the other side. He puts in a cross, same thing. It's towards Allende instead of Suarez this time. Goes just over his head, a slight deflection by Isla, the defender. And then it lands perfectly towards the back post for Chelo Wigan to come in and put a header on it. It hits off the keeper Coronel, but it kind of rebounds right towards Cello, where you can kind of do a spin move and kick it in. Question if he was onside or not. He obviously was when you looked at the replay. And Inter Miami goes up 2-0 in the 30th minute.
The irony that both our goals coming from the wide sides when we refused to use that over the last few games is interesting. Really good cross from Fafa Pico again, dangerous in an area that you can make something out of. And Chelo, kudos to him actually getting into a good spot and did not give up on it. Once he actually had that shot on goal, the keeper saves it. He didn't give up. He went back, followed up, and a really good finish. Inter Miami goes up 2-0 with just 2 shots on goal. So good for us. We're very clinical and efficient in the way that we play in front of goal, at least. And goals that were missing over the last few games finally start to flow tonight. And at this point, I was thinking if we can keep the pace, maybe 7-2 is on the cards.
Yeah, it did feel okay. Well, at the 39th minute, Inter Miami makes it 3-0. Spoiler alert. And that's when it started to feel like 7-2 was really in the cards. Messi goes high and wide to Allende, who's making that run down the right side. He puts a cross in. Fafa Picault goes to the near post, clears the space for Luis Suarez. Allende finds him. Suarez puts it on target. It gets deflected by Kyle Duncan, the right back, but it kind of lands right at the feet of Suarez. He's able to put another shot on goal, having already forced the keeper to make a dive, and so it becomes an easier finish for Suarez. He finally breaks his scoreless streak. Suarez back on the board. Inter Miami up 3-0, and it feels like we're going to run away with a game that they really needed to run away with, right?
Yeah, I think this was a game that you actually wanted to show a dominant performance, and at least the scoreline reflected that. I'm sure we're going to talk about whether it was actually worth the scoreline and what actually happened on the pitch, but it was good that Inter Miami was putting up some numbers on the score sheet.
I was rewatching the game today, and I'm sort of walking on the treadmill, and I have my phone. I'm taking notes on my phone and my little notes app, and I thought in the 38th minute, I wrote down, Inter Miami's really only had 2 chances this whole game. And here we are, the 39th minute, they get their third chance. It ends up being their third goal, but for a game that's 3-0, it doesn't feel like it's being dominated by Inter Miami. And so I was conflicted because Inter Miami gets a really, really nice 4-1 win, and it's going to look great on the stat sheet. It's going to look great on the schedule. But I wasn't seeing the sort of emphasis on being dominant, trying to play in different ways, trying to score in different ways, trying to be the best team on the continent or in the MLS. I didn't see that in the first half, even though the Red Bulls didn't really come to play. They weren't in it. They're not a great road team, haven't gotten a win on the road all season. And still, it felt very conservative with 3 outbreaks of offense. Now, all of them turned into goals, but I think there's another world where this, you hit off the post or it's a slight deflection or whatever, and all of a sudden it's 0-0 going to half. And if it was 0-0 going to half, I don't think Inter Miami fans would have had the same level of enthusiasm about this game, even though the way the game was playing out felt like it very easily could have been 0-0 or 1-1 or something like that. It looked dominant because of the scoreline, but it never felt that way. And especially in the rewatch, it felt kind of bland.
And there was 60 minutes of that, by the way, not just the first half. 60 minutes up until they brought off Peter Stroud. I thought Inter Miami was basically 50-50 with New York Red Bulls, and honestly lucky enough to just be 3-1 up. It was not a dominant performance by any means. And in fact, for 90% of those 60 minutes, we were quiet, compact, and defending in a low block for large parts. And this is a talking point that I have from the game, so we can touch upon it once we actually start analyzing the game. But there's a defensive mindedness in this team that is being reflected in how we're playing games. And it's what that does require us to do is make sure that every single chance that we have is a goal, because we don't create that many chances anymore. So we have to be really efficient. And it just so turned out that every chance that we got in this game, we put it on target and got a goal from it. But this is the pattern that we've been seeing for a while now. It was quite the same as we had in the last game against Vancouver, maybe not against Dallas, but the previous few games that we've seen. Inter Miami is very defensive, even when they're on top. Like the second half when we started, we were sitting in a low block, absorbing pressure like a team that's trying to hold on to a 1-0 lead, whereas we were 3-1 up. So it wasn't like we were going out there getting in for the kill and scoring more goals. And that's understandable. Sometimes you need that defensive mindedness. But we can touch on that a bit more once you complete the game recap.
Well, and I just want to add to that, both the 30th and the 39th minute goal, the one Cello scores, that ball hits Carlos Cornell sort of in the chest, and if it hits him from a slightly different angle, it's not in Cello's path, it's not a goal. And same thing with the 39th minute, it does hit him sort of in the stomach and bounces into the goal, and I get he was having trouble reacting, but if that shot is an inch or two in a slightly different spot, it just bounces off of him, goes to a defender, gets cleared. And you would not have thought Inter Miami wasted a million chances and only had a 1-0 lead at that point. This was a really close game. I will add, 43rd minute, there was a corner for the New York Red Bulls. It goes in, and Sofo puts a header on it from the back post, and it kind of just loops over everyone into the back corner. It's a really nice header. Like, if you could do that every time, you'd score a lot of goals. And that was it, I thought, for the first part of the game, which was the first 60-ish minutes, and I thought two things happened right around that point that are worth discussing and I think really changed the nature of the game. The first is Luis Suarez comes out in the 58th minute, and I think that was I think that had a major impact on Inter Miami. And then the 63rd minute, I think New York thought maybe we can get back in this game. They reshaped their lineup to be more offensive, and they took Peter Stroud out, who was on a yellow card. But by doing that, they kind of blew up their midfield in order to get more guys forward, and they were never really able to progress the ball very well from that point on. And that was the destruction of the New York Red Bulls. And that happened in the 63rd minute. So right around the 60th minute, two big changes that I thought really doomed the Red Bulls, and Inter Miami was able to take a ton of advantage of. And the next 20 minutes or so looked really, really good. Messi looked the best he's looked in a month. Segovia was phenomenal. Everything seemed to open up for Inter Miami, and it was much better.
That for me was the biggest positive that I took away from this game, and the blueprint that we should build upon. Putting someone next to Messi who he can play off of, and allowing Messi to have that space as well. We've talked about it yesterday in the post-game reaction. Segovia struggles when he's playing off the left and trying to play central, because then he occupies the same spaces as Messi. But essentially what Segovia was doing yesterday was playing between Busquets and Messi. So he was playing as that number 8 and playing off Messi really well on a level that was different from what we would normally see him position himself as. That worked wonderfully, allowed Messi to have a lot more space. Obviously, the game opened up when New York Red Bulls had to chase and they took off their defensive-minded midfielder. And that allowed Messi to take a lot more control on the ball and have a lot more space on the ball. And from there on, you could see that it's not a form thing, because Messi was able to do exactly what you would expect him to do. And it almost felt like the shackles were off and he was enjoying a lot more freedom. And that, I think, was the perfect representation of the fact that this is a systematic issue that needs to be addressed in a systematic and tactical manner. And it doesn't have to do with the form of the players alone.
I will say, last night I was thinking this had more to do with Peter Stroud coming off, and I did think that was a huge part of why there was so much space going the other way. But on the rewatch, I thought it was pretty clear that Suarez not being there made a huge difference for Segovia. I thought the last 20 minutes of the game, it was exactly what you were saying. Segovia was playing sort of 10, 15 yards behind Messi. But right when they switched to that, where Suarez comes off and Segovia goes from the right to the left, there was a ton of 1-2s between Segovia and Lionel Messi, and including the one that leads to the fourth goal in the 67th minute, where Messi goes to Segovia, back to Messi, back to Segovia. Segovia kind of pops it over the top. Messi bodies off the defender and whips it in for a goal to make it 4-1, where that would never happen if Suarez is on the field, because Segovia is trying to give space to Suarez, and then if he plays deeper, he's got to worry about Messi. And so I actually do think Segovia's biggest problem on that left side is not just crashing into Messi's area, but it's also crashing into the area that Suarez wants to play in. And so on the rewatch, I'm much more concerned about that trio playing together, fitting together. I don't even think it works anymore. I think it's almost broken, and it's like we got to try and find a different way to have Segovia make an impact on this team, because he clearly has a ton of talent. He's a playmaker. Of course, young players will have ups and downs, and maybe that has been part of why we've seen him struggle over the last last 6 weeks or so. But clearly, if you can put him in a position to succeed, there's real talent that he can take advantage of. So I would be I'm re-energized on we got to find a different place for Segovia so that he can have an impact, especially if Messi and Luis Suarez are
Or a
starting.
different place for Suarez.
Or a different place for Suarez. But, okay, we'll have that
It's
conversation
simple.
a little bit later.
Yeah. We'll get to it when we talk about the players and the awards, I'm sure.
Okay. And then, I mean, listen, there was some chances in the last 20 minutes. I don't feel like we need to go over them because Inter Miami clearly had the ability to run right through the midfield of the New York Red Bulls, and Messi looked really good. They created some chances. Don't ultimately score. Alan Obando comes in. He had a really nice turn at one point, draws a foul, but Kramaski, takes a guy on one-on-one and beats him. There were some nice moments, but I think the game was done and dusted, and I think what we were going to learn from this game, I think, had expired at that point. Inter Miami gets a 4-1.
Yeah, I agree. At least it was a win now.
Yeah, 4-1 victory, a result that would have gotten us through on Wednesday. Let's start with the New York Red Bulls because they were solid last year, and I think we had a very warped perception of them because we went on the road and lost 4-0, and then we beat them 6-1 in a game that felt more magical than like a reality check. No team is going to win 6-1 on a consistent basis when you're playing in the same league, same division. Like, you just played really well, and that's what happened with Messi in that game and Suarez and Matias Rojas. So Inter Miami didn't really get a clear picture of what the Red Bulls were. This year, I think they've added some interesting pieces, especially Choupo-Moting, who I think can provide a lot for them. But they have a ton of injuries that are really important for them, especially Lewis Morgan, who I think changes that team 180 degrees because Choupo-Moting wants to come back and set up his teammates, and there is no quality players playing ahead of him for him to set up, at least not sort of high-quality guys that are going to be consistent goal scorers. So once Lewis Morgan comes back into the team for them, they'll be much better offensively. And then I also thought they fell apart in the second half when they started to make changes. They have 6 or 7 guys missing. The depth of that team is really weak. And so once they had to start making changes, the talent level just really fell off in a way that just doesn't happen with Inter Miami because of how many good players Inter Miami has. So I thought the Red Bulls didn't look particularly good in this game.
Yeah, but I also would want to say that the scoreline was a bit flattering to Inter Miami. It didn't, like the New York Red Bulls weren't as bad to deserve a 4-1 loss. Maybe towards the second half, we were basically blowing them out, but they were fine. It just so happens every time we play them, one or the other of their key players is missing. Last time, Emil Forsberg didn't play in the first game. In the second game, he was a non-factor because we were so charged up in getting revenge. And then in this game, they didn't have Lewis Morgan. So it might have been a different story. They did have a couple of really good opportunities in front of goal, but were never clinical or goal-threatening in the way that you would expect them to be. And I think their standing in the table reflects their performances as well. I think Inter Miami was overall the better team on the day as well. But Red Bull had a couple of really good moments. I liked what I saw from Sofor. He seems like a really interesting player. And obviously, I thought we did really well controlling Emil Forsberg and not allowing him to get control of the game. And then Choupo-Moting getting on the score sheet, but I don't think that was his goal as such. It should have been Sofor's goal.
I think they changed it.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, I thought they had the pieces to challenge, but honestly, Inter Miami just had more quality on the day, and as you mentioned, a lot more depth in our squad to be able to get that result.
Yeah, last week we played a Vancouver team that was able to bring impact players off the bench. We played a Dallas team that was able to bring a few impact players off the bench. The Red Bulls just didn't have that, and so I thought, especially in the last 30 minutes, when Inter Miami really starts to take over this game, it was like the talent difference was really noticeable. Okay, let's get back to Miami. Where do you want to start? Because I think we could talk about Javier Mascherano. I think we could talk about Luis Suarez. I think we could talk about the defensive mentality of this sort of outfit. A mentality test, a rebound for Inter Miami. Lionel Messi having sort of frustrated thoughts about this game. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the smaller picture and then the bigger picture. So perhaps we talk about the game itself and how Inter Miami approached it and what the mindset was, and then I think the larger picture.
So one of the things that I think we got used to with Lionel Messi is just trying to dominate games. And of course, sometimes that wouldn't happen. And of course, sometimes the other team would play really well. And sometimes you play really great teams where it was really hard to establish and dominate a game. But that was the goal, like 85% of the time. Dominate possession, dominate the chance creation opportunities, trust your defenders to play in transition when you do, in the few times that you do give the ball up. But try and win 4-0, 4-1, or something like that. And even to start this season, it felt more like that was our goal. Coming out of the preseason, we played some poor quality teams and we really beat up on them. The first couple games of the season, ignoring the freezing game against Sporting Kansas City, we put up 3 against Sporting KC, 4 against Houston on the road, 2 against the NYCFC when we're down to 10 men. Like, this felt like a team that was going to be an offensive juggernaut and also be more defensively solid, not because we had to sacrifice our offensive capabilities, but because we had some better personnel and the coaching staff was going to get more out of guys like Noah Allen and Toto Aviles, and Maxi Falcone was a nice addition. Now it feels like they've really sacrificed their offensive dynamism in order to be defensively solid, and yet they're not actually defensively solid, and they're not that creative offensively. So it feels like it's really backfired, and it feels like, in my opinion, if you have Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, you should be an offensively dominant team, not a team trying to carry those two as you sit back and try and hit on the counter. Because it does feel like a lot of the time this team just sits deep, deep, deep and tries to hit in transition, and that's it. Okay. Anyways, go ahead.
No, I think that's a very legit point. You mentioned something about it comes at the sacrifice of our offensive output. I think that's by design. Javier Mascherano wants this team to be a lot more defensively sound than offensively creative and expansive. The reason for that, I believe, is last season Inter Miami was quite poor defensively. We had our struggles, well documented. Everyone's spoken about it. Javier Mascherano, being a defensive coach, I think came in thinking that we need to set ourselves up structurally a lot more defensively, make sure that we are really good, solid in the back. And then the player quality alone is going to allow us to create those opportunities and win games. Last year, the philosophy under Tata Martino was outscore the opponents. When Messi was there, outscore the opponents. That was it. This year is just sit back, absorb pressure, and try to capitalize on any opportunities that come our way. Unfortunately, in doing that, we're not creating any opportunities by ourselves. And that you can see because when we face low blocks, when we face compact structures against us, compact defensive structures against us, we can no longer just rely on our individual effort and individual talent to get those goal-threatening opportunities. It was working really well at the start of the season. As you said, in preseason, we faced some really poor quality opposition. At the start of the season, the players were fresh. Everyone was running around. We were able to create a lot more. And then as fatigue started to settle in, as we started to face a lot more defensive-minded, lockdown opposition, we ran out of ideas in offense. What we're doing is, I think, what Javier Mascherano wants us to do, that is sit back, play a really low block, and not let the opposition through. Unfortunately, we still leak goals, even though we try to play defensive. And now that fatigue has settled in, now that we're facing difficult, compact defensive structures, our offensive output has completely dwindled away. When you're tired as a team, the first thing that you rely on is your patterns, is your training, as your instinct. We don't have a set instinct pattern or training in the offensive department as a team. And that's why it looks almost like chaotic and clueless when we're trying to play against low blocks. Yesterday was really helpful as a game, just to level set, because Red Bulls play is a lot more expansive. But even then, in the first half, when we were 3-1 up, towards the end of the first half, Red Bull was just attacking us and we were absorbing pressure. It was even more evident in the second half of the start when Inter Miami, for the first 15, 20 minutes, just continued to absorb without actually having any sort of an outlet. Again, having Luis Suarez up top doesn't necessarily help because he doesn't offer that outlet or a channel that you can just boot the ball up to and he can drive forward and relieve the pressure. We play very, very defensive to the point that our defensive line is almost next to a starry. And then when our offense tries to actually create something, they're too far up and disconnected from the midfield. So there's a lot. I think we can do an entire episode on this. But I think it's Javier Mascherano's philosophy that Inter Miami become defensively sound. And that's going to inevitably come at the expense of our offensive opportunities.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about this because it feels like it feels pitiful to be talking about this. Because if you want to be a defensive team, you have to build your team around that. You spend your money on good defenders and you spend your money on great defensive midfielders. And by the way, you play your best defenders, you play your best defensive midfielders. You don't.
And irony is you don't even play the one defensive midfielder that you have in the squad in the biggest games, right? When you do want to play compact and defensive.
And same thing goes for on the back line where, Gonzalo Lujan seems to be a really high priority
Preferred
for
outlet,
Mascherano. If you're Nashville under Gary Smith and you want to go spend your DP money on Walker Zimmerman, that's fine. But this is a team that's built around Lionel Messi, who's obviously the greatest player ever, Luis Suarez, who's one of the best strikers ever, Jordi Alba, who is an offensive attacking left back, and Sergio Busquets, who's clearly not a defensive monster. These are your four best players, and you're telling me you're going to build a defensive team with those guys. What are we doing here? And by the way, that's what it seems like. And so when Javier Mascherano got hired, they talked about playing offense and being a team that wants to score a lot of goals. And Jorge Mas was in the press conference and mentioned that. But here we are, as we get deeper and deeper into the Javier Mascherano era, it feels like they've become more and more defensive. It's really crazy, man, because you have Lionel Messi. I mean, what are we talking about? This is a team that scored 100 goals last year. And it's weird to say on a game where they score 4 goals, but that they did that with individual talent and some moments of like make the match happen, not because they were just dominating possession and creating tons of chances. And we haven't seen them do that really, aside from the LAFC comeback, for a very long time. And last night, which was your chance to really change things against an opponent that you should have been able to handle pretty easily, it was an opportunity to sort of try and establish yourself as a dominant team. They didn't try to do that, which was disappointing. And this same performance that they had last night, they're going to go on the road to Minnesota next week, and it's not going to work. I mean, it could work. Like they could get a win, but it's not going to make them like a dominant team. So
you know what's going to happen? Gressel's going to score a hat trick. That's what's going to happen.
He's not going to score a hat trick. He can't finish. If we learned anything about Gressel, it's that he cannot hit.
You have an hat trick of assists. There you go.
Yeah, that's more likely. Okay, so Luis Suarez. I've tried to defend Suarez so long. I have to cough, so I'm going to let you just talk about Luis Suarez for a second.
Do I have to say anything? I told you, this didn't seem like the Suarez that we saw last season. In preseason, he looked fresher, sharper than he did last preseason. But I could see something is off in the way that he's playing. He's slower. He's more lethargic, not in the sense that he's not ready and fit. He just takes him time to complete his movements. And I don't know if we can rely on him playing twice a week. This is still a player who can contribute, by the way. He's still our starting striker. I would put him in my starting 11 every single day of the week. But playing him on the Wednesday or the Thursday and then playing him on the Saturday or the Sunday is a recipe for disaster because you're running him into the ground. He's not able to keep up physically. And he is the spear of that spine. And unfortunately, the way he plays interferes with the way the midfield wants to play, with the way the defense tries to progress the ball. And if he's not on top of his game, it interferes with Inter Miami's game. And that's why you have to play him in the big games and then take him out when he's not able to perform, or give him ample rest so that he can recover for the big games. I think at this point in time, he needs to see the bench. He just has to. I'm very happy that he got the goal yesterday, but I think he's doing things that inevitably hurts our offensive creation.
Listen, he got 2 goal contributions yesterday, and that's what we need from him, right? Like last season, he had moments where he would not be athletic enough to he's not a fundamentally different player than he was last year. And maybe you think that, maybe some of the people in the chat think that. I don't think that. I think he just had a cold spell. But I think part of this structure and the offensive problems that we're having are greatly diminishing his opportunities to have goal contributions. And then if you're not getting a bunch of goal contributions from him, it becomes a problem because he doesn't provide all the other aspects of the game that a striker could provide. But here's the problem. He's going to be the starting striker. And so unlike when we're talking about a Federico Redondo versus Yannick Bright, or a Cello Wiegand versus Ian Frey, or even like an Ustadi versus Drake, or Lujan versus Toto, like there's a world where someone proves themselves to be better and takes over the starting job. That's not going to happen with Luis Suarez. Like it's not, Allende's not doing that. Fafa's not doing, like it's Luis Suarez. And so you have to figure out how to make it work if you're the coach. And the frustrating thing for me is you haven't tried anything different to make it work. I'm fine putting him on the bench for a game. Like I've been in favor of trying to do that for the last month, really. But you're going to have to come back to him. And so you have to figure out a way to get him to be productive on a consistent basis. You can't just say we're going to bench him for the next 10 games like we did with Ian Frey, and he's going to get 20 minutes off the bench 3 times in the next 10 games. That's not going to happen. This is Luis Suarez we're talking about. And so you have to figure out what you can do to make this work. And already Messi hasn't been working until Suarez came off. So now you have a problem with those two working together. Maybe it isn't working that well. We talked about how Segovia has, I think, a real problem fitting in on a field where both Suarez and Messi are sort of trying to interact with each other, because there's very little space for him offensively, especially on the left side. And as we saw yesterday, Segovia and Messi on the field together looked really good when Suarez wasn't there. So now it does start to feel like Suarez is the problem, particularly when it comes to sparking Messi, and particularly when it comes to sparking Segovia. And I say this to mention, Segovia is part of your best 11, and obviously Messi's part of your best 11. And so if you're Suarez, if you're Mascherano, you have to figure out a way to fit Suarez into this best 11 as well, because he's also one of your best players. And that means changing his role, or changing the whole structure to try and make everything fit better.
But what's his role? I don't think Javier Mascherano has given him a specific role. The reason Luis Suarez comes back in the middle and drops deep and tries to influence the game as a false 9 is because he's not able to involve himself in the final third as a striker. And he's not able to make those runs in behind or keep up with all the balls that are coming his way. So he then drops deep and tries to distribute the ball further forward. I don't think that's a role that Javier Mascherano has given him. I think that's a role he himself resolves to when he's unable to get involved in the final third.
I understand. That's not what I meant by that. What I'm trying to say is you either need to change the entire structure of your offense so that he can fit in. Like, I understand you're not going to change who he is as a player. You need to change the entire structure of the offense so that he can fit in. And part of it is I think they've been too focused centrally, which we've talked about plenty, not focusing enough on the wide areas. And then the other thing is that they're too defensive. And if you're constantly trying to create offense in transitions and you're only getting 3 or 4 moments in a game where you're actually having sustained pressure high up the field, those are the areas that Suarez are going to be great in. And if you're trying to play in transition, which feels like Miami's doing a ton of these days, then Suarez is not the right person for that. But that's not Suarez's fault. That's Mascherano's fault. And That's Mascherano has to change that because he's not going to bench Messi. I'm sorry, he's not going to bench Suarez, and he can't bench Suarez. Like, whatever we think of Messi and Mascherano's relationship, Messi and Suarez is certainly a higher priority than to everyone than Mascherano. So again, we get back to Suarez doesn't fit, and it's probably the responsibility of the entire setup. And it just feels like this team needs a total reset. And we didn't get that last night, which is, again, disappointing. Suarez, I think, has incredible talent to be able to find goals, and he did it last night. He gets 2 goal contributions. Even though he didn't play well for 58 minutes, he still got 2 goal contributions. That's still in him. But this team needs to reorganize what they're doing in order to find that more consistently for Suarez. And I think that's where the conversation needs to be. Not bench him. I'm not saying you can't bench him for a game. I'm not saying you don't bring him off the bench for a game. But this idea that Suarez is just going to fall out of favor and because he's slow, he just doesn't fit. Like, that's never going to be what this team is. And so we have to try something different that involves him, I think.
I think there's a conversation to be had about putting him on the bench for a couple of games as well. And I don't mean like not involve him in the game at all, but bring him off the bench, because sometimes players just are mentally fatigued and just need a little bit of reset. And maybe that's going to help him as well.
And I'm not arguing with you on that. But even if you bench him for the next 3 games, he's coming back in for the next 10 games after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is my point. So,
there's a much bigger problem than just Luis Suarez not performing, and it's to do with how to utilize the players that you have in your disposal.
That's my point, is that whether you bench and again, like, whether you bench him for a game, I don't think he'll play next Wednesday. They're going to travel West Coast to San Jose. I bet he won't even travel if I had to make a guess. I think that's fine, but you have to come back to how do we make Suarez work, because he was one of the best players in the league last year and still has the talent in him. Here's my theory, and it involves Segovia. And so now let's talk about Segovia. He and Messi like to play in the same parts of the pitch when they're at the same depth of the sort of in possession, like the formation in possession. And that's what it's been often when Segovia's been the left winger and Messi's been the number 10. And especially when you have Suarez, who likes to cut back and get into the ball, he also occupies a very similar area. And because it's Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, Segovia gets lost. Because of course he does. Because he's not Lionel Messi and he's not Luis Suarez. Like, naturally, that's what's going to happen. I also think that trio has somehow fundamentally made Jordi Alba less aggressive. I'm sure it's also part of the game plan too, but so that's also a whole other thing. I think that you need to find a way to get Messi and Segovia to play well together, and the current system doesn't work. If you're not going to change the system, you have to put Segovia somewhere else, either as a right-sided player, where I think he could be very useful, and I'd be happy to explain why, or you have to put him as like a 6'8" box-to-box type midfielder where he's playing deeper, and his role's not as a creative attacking midfielder, but as a ball progressor to create like the pass before the pass, right? To set you up in goal-scoring opportunities instead of being the goal-scoring opportunity. Where are you at with Segovia?
No, I think you play him in the midfield as a 6'8". You have to. I think moving Messi to the right might be a better option and accommodate Segovia there, so that Messi, whenever he comes into that number 10 role, Segovia can either drift into the right and play on a different level, or he can play as that connector between Busquets and Messi in that facilitator, as you mentioned, because Messi was automatically a completely different player when he had Segovia to bounce off of. And I don't think there's many players in this team who are actually capable of playing that 1-2 in the way Segovia does with Messi. He is part of our best starting 11. He has to be accommodated in there. And right now, that left spot is just not working for him. And I don't know whether if you shift him on the right, it changes anything as such, because
I think it does.
I think the problem remains the same. But yeah, go on. Tell us exactly why moving him to the right might have a better output from Segovia, because for me, I think it's very similar to what he does on the left.
So Lionel Messi is a central player. He likes to drift left, when you're heading towards goal. He likes to receive the ball and drift to his left. Segovia likes to receive the ball and drift to his right. And so all of a sudden, I think you're creating space. You're separating them with real space. And then that reopens the space for Suarez and Messi to interact with each other. Segovia is not a part of it. He's on the other side of the pitch. And then also, it gives you a facilitator on the right side of the pitch where instead of just kind of leaving that entire side of the field wide open, you then get a facilitator. And I think if you double down with Ian Frey on that side, you now get a creative playmaker on the right side who can put in crosses to, whether it's to Tadeo Allende or Fafa Picault, crashing on the left, put in crosses to Suarez, 1-2 with Messi centrally, or put the ball to the corner to the overlapping right back. And you're getting a very creative player who's very technical, plenty of options in space. I think that could be a real recipe for success. And we haven't seen it much, but I think that is something I would like to see at least be given a real opportunity. We've only seen it for 45 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and I want to see what it looks like. And I'm scared that if you put him as the 6, one of the double pivot midfielders, you lose a real defensive bite to your team, because that means you're either benching Yannick Bright, which I hate to do, or you're benching Busquets, which they're not going to do. And so if we're sticking with the same system, I'd like to see him on the right first. If we're going to reset the whole system, give me him as a box-to-box midfielder in the midfield. But I would, if we're not going to scrap the whole system, which I don't think we're going to do anytime soon because we didn't see any sort of changes yesterday, I'd like to see him given a real opportunity on the right for 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, I think a 4-3-3 with Messi on the right and Segovia, Bright, and Busquets in the middle can basically be just the same thing that you described, with them switching between playing on the right and playing in the center. And that's what we had last season as well with Rojas and Messi at times. So he just has to try new things, and it doesn't have to be drastic changes in the structure itself. It just has to realize that some tweaks here and there can really get the best out of everyone on the pitch. And that's the biggest issue that I have with Javier Mascherano. He's not even willing to make those tiny changes or experiment with them, because everyone saw it yesterday. As soon as Segovia and Messi were playing in that sort of 1-2 role, it completely changed the nature of the game. So I don't know what's going to happen in moving forward, but I think Segovia needs to play more on the right-hand side or centrally if we need to get the best out of him.
I also picked out 2 moments that I think sort of reinforce what I'm trying to say here. The first is that 39th minute goal where Messi puts the ball high and wide to Allende, and then it's Fafa Picault on the left making the first run, and that distracts the defense to allow Suarez to peel off and get into open space. I can see that exact same pattern of play with Segovia making being the guy on the right, high and wide on the right, and Tadeo Allende being the runner on the left who gets ahead and allows Suarez to peel off and not be forced to try and lead the line, because it's either Fafa Picault or Tadeo Allende on the left that is leading the line in that sort of pattern of play. And then also in the 55th minute, when Segovia was playing on the right for a few minutes, he gets on the ball sort of wide right, and he has a really nice long cross to Fafa Picault that there is just acres of space to the left side, and he has the vision, the passing range to make that long switch that can open things up. I think Fafa ended up getting it back to Messi and it ended up petering out. But it was just a moment where you can see Segovia on the right side getting into the final third and using his vision, his creative playmaking skills to create an opening for Inter Miami. So I think when he's playing on the left in this 4-2-3-1, it's almost like that doesn't work anymore. We need to try something else. Let's try him on the right. That's what I want to see.
Will we get it? Probably not.
Okay. Anything else, or you want to get to awards? Do you want to talk about how Messi's feeling? Because some people in the chat were talking about how he was.
I think that's a big
frustrated.
picture question. So let's do the awards first, and then maybe talk about how Messi is actually feeling internally, because it does seem like he's a bit frustrated with things.
Okay. So let's get to awards. If you haven't seen our show before, we do 6 awards on this show: a heron of the match, a heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. And Saur, since you went first last time, I will go first this time, and I did it. I really did it. I am giving Chelawigan the heron of the match. He gets a goal. He gets an assist. I thought Fafa Picault was a really great shout. I thought a really, really good performance from Segovia, but obviously he comes off the bench in the second half. And I don't think Chelawigan's ever going to get this again. So I'm giving it to him now. I have been as harsh on Cello as anyone. He is a league average right back, but he had a really good game, and I'm doing it. I'm giving him man of the match, heron of the match. Give me Chelawigan.
I'll be honest, I thought he was average other than the 2 goal contributions that he had. A really good cross that led to the Fafa goal, and then really good instincts to go out and finish that goal when he had the opportunity with the Fafa cross coming in. Other than that, I thought he was fine. There was...
But if you play fine and get 2 goal contributions as a right back, it's a good game, man.
I'm sorry, I just read a comment and I have absolutely lost it. I need to get my composure back. But good for you for picking Chelawigan. I think my first choice would have been either Fafa Picault or if not, then Sergio Busquets. So I'm surprised that you went with Chelawigan. Listen, he had a really good performance yesterday, much better than the ones that he's been putting in recently. So you have to give him the plaudits when he does well. I still think there's room for improvement in that right back role. But hopefully he can build on from here because we saw some really good moments from him and you have to applaud that.
Can we reframe the Chelawigan Ian Frey conversation? And tell me, I was thinking about this today. Tell me if you think this is an apt comparison. This is like Noah Allen versus Jordi Alba, almost, where Noah Allen, if he starts at left back, we're totally comfortable with that. We think he's going to put in a shift. We think he's fine. He's not going to cost us the game as a left back. He's a good, solid left back. But Jordi Alba is obviously a million times better. And I'm not going to say Ian Frey is quite as good as Jordi Alba, although I do think Noah Allen as a left back and Chelawigan are like pretty comparable. It's not that they aren't solid players. They are certainly MLS players. But Ian Frey is still way better. So I want to give Cello his plaudits for a really good performance. This has not affected my opinion on the Ian Frey Cello conversation at all.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I don't want to talk negative about Cello today because I think he had a really good performance. So good for him. And hopefully he can get a few more of these. Maybe I'll just give him one for the bands next time so that he has 2 instead of just 1 Heron of the Match award.
Is that an apt comparison?
I think that's a really good comparison, although I do think you're underestimating Noah Allen's influence in this team, both in the left center back and in that left back role. I think it's more so than Chelawigan. And obviously Ian Frey is not as good as Jordi Alba.
Well, then it's perfectly balanced there.
Yeah, it kind of is. I will say, though, Chelawigan has more poor performances than good performances. And then Noah Allen has had more good performances than poor performances. So, yeah, I don't think he's a questionable comparison, but I'll take it. I think it's a good way of thinking about it.
I want to give props to Chelawigan because I have said many bad things about him, and I want to give him credit when he deserves it. So great game from Cello.
I completely agree with Mirna here. Scotty, what a disappointing Heron of the Match selection. Cook him, chat. Cook him.
Okay. What do you got for the Heron that flew north?
This one was a bit difficult to pick because I don't think anyone had a really poor performance as such. So hard to choose. But I have my answer and I have my reasoning. I'm going to go with Tadeo Allende as my Heron that flew north award. I know this is very, very harsh because he had some good moments and got into some really good positions. But my justification for this is that he had some really good opportunities in front of goal that he should have finished off or done better with and was unable to. He could have potentially taken those opportunities and given us a bigger result. That is a 7-2 scoreline. But overall, I just think he could have done more. And compared to some of the other players, I couldn't pick anybody else. Ustari, I thought, was fine. Gonzalo Lujan had a good game. Chelo Wigan got the heron of the match from you. Noah Allen was really good. Jordi Alba was good. Busquets, bright, great. Messi, maybe in the first 60 minutes, but in the last 20 minutes, Messi was an absolute beast. So yeah, Allende was the only legit choice because even Suarez had a goal this time around. So I think of the starting 11, Allende was probably the least best of the lot.
Yeah, listen, I thought the only chance he had really, he was the opportunity in the ninth minute where he maybe should have gone for the shot. Instead, he tries to switch it to Suarez, but then he goes and chases Carmona down in the corner and earns the ball back for Cello that turns into the goal. So I thought he made up for it. And then he also he doesn't get an assist on Suarez's goal because Suarez shoots and then he has to score on the rebound, but he starts, I mean, he's a huge part of that play, picks out the pass that turns into that goal. So
Fine, I'll change my hair in
no,
that.
no. But what I was going to say is I agree with you. I don't think there was any particularly disappointing performances. I thought this team, like individually, everyone played pretty well. So, and that's, I think, what happens when we talk about how there's so many structural issues and you still win 4-1. It's because the players are just really, really good. And
Yeah,
they played well.
individually
So,
good performances.
someone had to get it.
Yep.
Okay, first individual award. I'm going to go with the Tries for the Guys award.
The Tries for the Guys award. Is this a singular player tries for our guys award, or is it tries as in a football reference or a sports reference?
This is tries as in your triceps. The muscle on
Aha.
the back of your arm.
Okay, that just completely throws me off because who has a tricep? That's big. The Tries for the Guys award obviously refers to somebody who goes to the gym regularly. That's definitely not Luis Suarez. I think you're going to give this to Fafa Picault for some reason.
This goes to Lionel Messi because he bodied off a defender that is way bigger than him in Noah Isla to create that goal for himself in the 67th minute. And you said in the pregame show that he needed a goal as much as anyone. He hits the gym. He's very strong. And he creates a goal for himself. Lionel Messi, really, I wanted to give him an award because I wanted to talk about him. And that's
I had an
what I
award
came
for
up
him.
with. But invisible in the first 60 minutes. And then Peter Stroud comes out. The Red Bulls change their formation. And Suarez comes out right at the same time. And then Lionel Messi looks like a new man, gets his goal. What are we thinking about with Messi?
It's not about form. He's not in poor form. It's just he's struggling to figure out how to connect the pieces on the pitch the way we're playing in offense. And I think he's frustrated with that. You saw immediately that as soon as he had somebody to play along with, somebody who was willing to pass him the ball 1-2 and not just give him long, bouncy balls across the pitch, he was able to actually make some really good opportunities and look like a completely transformed player, the Messi that we know in the last 30 minutes. That just is proof that it's not a form issue. This is a structural issue. And I think that's where his frustrations are also stemming from. His invisibility stems from the fact that he's trying to get involved. He's trying to do things, but he's just not able to connect the pieces of how to get everyone involved and make the best out of everyone in that front line. And I thought the last 30 minutes were fantastic from him. Man of the match level performance from him and deserved goal that he received. But the first 60 minutes were quite poor, but I wouldn't blame him. Absolutely not.
Okay, so I gave him the award. He gets his goal, but I want to talk big picture now about Messi because he looks disgruntled, and we keep saying, like, and everyone keeps saying, if Messi wanted changes, there would be changes. But he looks frustrated, and it looks like he doesn't look like he's particularly happy with what's going on. The offense does look dysfunctional for large portions of the game. They don't look particularly dynamic, and especially when you're talking about good teams against good defenses, which we will see next weekend against Minnesota. Like, I can understand why he's upset, and maybe we are putting too much on him to make changes to the formation, to the structure. Like, they hire a coach because Messi doesn't want to be in the film room for 6 hours a day, and he doesn't want to be designing tactics, and he doesn't want to be evaluating the 19-year-old right back versus the 22-year-old right back, and he doesn't want to be scouting Argentina's, up and coming backup right backs to figure out who's going to be the next guy. Like, he wants to go ball out. He wants to be great. He wants to win a bunch of stuff. But they have the coaching staff for a reason. And so I am wondering if this is sort of like, maybe Messi isn't super happy with this. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think he's there yet with Mascherano. I'm afraid that his frustrations might stem from his players around him. That for me would be a big worry if he's frustrated by the players around him. And again, all of this is speculation. Maybe he wants everyone to do better on the pitch. Maybe he thinks he's the one who always has to try the most and actually make things happen. I don't know where his head is at. We can only, as I said, speculate. So we'll see. But I don't know if he's frustrated with the coaching yet. There's no indications as such. We'll see. We'll see as the games go on.
He's a huge part of the decision-making process. And so you'd imagine if he was getting the things he wanted, he would be happy. And he doesn't look happy. So maybe he's not as big of a part of the decision-making process as he wants, or maybe he thinks this is the right way to do it and it's just not working. But, I mean, I'll be honest. Last year with Tata Martino, this was an attacking team. I cannot imagine for the life of me that Messi wants to play on a more defensive team. Like, that just, I can't imagine it. And especially now that they've lost, like, maybe if he feels like it'll give him the best opportunity in a specific tournament, but they're not going to play in a tournament like that for quite some time. There's no reason for them not to open it up and try and just score a bunch of goals for fun. So I don't think this is how Messi wants to be playing, and I think this is how Mascherano wants to be playing, and that doesn't feel right to me. Something feels off here. I don't know.
Something does feel off, and I feel like we may be reaching with the conversation and trying to make stuff up, but that's our job, I guess. That's what we do here. Regardless, I hate to be in that position because you're basically stuck between the devil and the deep sea here, where if you are frustrated with your friend who you've supported so publicly, and then it changes, like you change the coach or whatever, that conversation is going to be really harsh, and it's going to generate a lot of comments from the public eye as well, because everyone knows Mascherano came in because he is friends with Messi. So if that changes, if Mascherano leaves, then the responsibility for that decision is going to come on Messi's shoulders. Why did you bring him in the first place and all of that? So perhaps he's frustrated with that. Perhaps he's struggling to understand where the issues are. Perhaps he himself doesn't want to put the blame on Mascherano and thinks it's the players who are not doing the job correctly. Who knows? There are multiple different ways that this can go. Worst case scenario for me would be Messi actually blaming the players around him rather than recognizing that this is a structural issue.
I will be honest, we didn't plan to talk about Messi in any sort of deep way, so maybe we aren't as prepared as we are, but as we should be. But some people are mentioning in the chat, so I thought I'd throw it in the rundown. This is disconnected, and even after Javier Mascherano saying it's all good, we're not worried about it, he plays the same system, he still doesn't look like he's very happy. Even after he's balling out in the last 20 minutes, he scores a goal, doesn't celebrate. He just has like a stern look on his face. So I don't know.
And maybe he's frustrated with his own performances. He hasn't played particularly well in the 4 games. He hasn't scored in 4 games. And Inter Miami got knocked out by Vancouver quite embarrassingly. So maybe that's still on his mind. At the end of the day, he is a professional. So perhaps that's what has him frustrated as well. Again, so many questions. We haven't necessarily given this an entire thought, so may not be coherent, but multiple ways this conversation can go.
I will add, we do the instant reaction, and we literally hit live basically the second the final whistle blows. So oftentimes the things that happen immediately after the game, we miss. And, Cynical Tube in the chat is saying they had the camera on him for a good 20 seconds after, and he looked not happy, and Messi King saying he didn't celebrate his goal, which I did notice and thought was a little weird. So I think we should keep an eye on this and maybe think about it. Maybe we'll do a midweek episode on it at some point down the line if this continues. What is your first award?
So since it's Star Wars Day, I have based all my awards on a Star Wars theme. And the first award that I'm going to go for is Help Me, Obi-Wan Kenobi Award.
The Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi Award. This is Princess Leia in the very beginning, in trouble, and the only person she knows that might be able to help him. Who is in trouble and needs help? Considering Javier Mascherano is not an option.
This is less about Princess Leia and more about Obi-Wan Kenobi, just saying.
Oh, so your award isn't well thought out. Great.
Hey,
this is Fafa
It's
Picault.
better than Tries for the Guys Award. I don't even know what that means.
Well, just because you don't know what it means doesn't mean it's not a great award.
Just because
It's
you
a
don't
big
think
part-
it's a good award doesn't mean it's not a good
saying in
award.
Workout culture. Come on, guys. Mistiano says Princess Redondo. Is it Princess Redondo?
It is indeed Princess or no, it's not Princess Redondo. Come on.
Is it
guys.
Fafa Picault?
Think
That's my
more.
real guess.
No,
Fafa
it's not
Picault's my
Fafa
real
Picault.
guess. Because he would have a purple lightsaber. No doubt
No.
about it.
Also, Obi-Wan does not have a purple lightsaber. Just saying.
Okay, but Fafa Picault would.
100%.
That's my guess. Fafa Picault. Who is it?
No, it's not Fafa Picault. This award, Help Me Obi-Wan Kenobi Award, goes to Sergio Busquets. Because every single time Inter Miami is under pressure, is facing a high press, Sergio Busquets was just out there controlling the narrative, just chilling out, just calming things down, getting us out of pressure. And I thought he had a fantastic game yesterday. Very underrated, and a lot of good that we were seeing was from him. For me, he was a contender for player of the match. And honestly, in the fantastic 4 performances that we've been seeing over the last 6 weeks, I think Busquets has been the most consistent and the most regular performer, the one that I'm least disappointed about. And regardless of the last 6 weeks, I think yesterday especially, he was very important for Inter Miami to just get out of the press and make sure that we're keeping our tempo and rhythm without actually getting bogged down by the Red Bull pressure. And I thought he had a really, really good performance, and that's why I wanted to give him an award. Much like Princess Leia, I think this team's Obi-Wan Kenobi is Sergio Busquets, who helps us out of trouble every single time we're in it. So glad that he plays for us, right?
Yeah, he was excellent. Had a shout for man of the match. He's the one player that his game isn't particularly affected by this system that we're playing. Unlike Jordi Alba, unlike Suarez, unlike Messi, his game isn't.
Or any
affected
system.
greatly. True. True. Well, listen, if you want to make
Unless
him
you counterattack.
the number 6 on a
Yeah.
high line, then maybe that's a little bit different. But certainly he fits this system fine, and he's a great player. So good award. I don't have much to say about Busquets because he's just been solid and stable and good, and he's done what he's always done. And so I feel very comfortable with Busquets, and I'm happy to sort of leave it at that.
Right. What's
Okay,
your
Saur.
next gym award?
I have a question for you. Would you rather me give the award that's better or talk about the player that I want to talk about more?
Give the awards that's better, because I'm going to give an award that I want to talk about the player rather than the award. So you do the
But what
award,
if
I'll do the player.
What if I steal your award by giving out the? Okay. I'm
Then
gonna
I have
give the
another
talk-
one. It's okay.
The talk tiki to me.
The talk tiki to me, it goes to Segovia because he played tiki taka with Lionel Messi. That's why.
It does go to Segovia because he did.
This
play
played out
tiki-taka with
perfectly,
Messi.
by the way, because I had a really good award for Segovia that I didn't want to talk about him. And then, yeah.
We talked about him already, so maybe we don't have to rehash.
Yeah.
He's so talented, and I'm not going to say that a young player being inconsistent isn't at least partially responsible for why he hasn't been great lately. But I think the biggest part is that he's trying to find areas on the pitch for himself to be effective, and he's being placed on the side where Messi and Suarez also like to be effective, and so he's rightfully giving way to them, but it ends up just making him feel unimportant and takes away his ability to impact the game. So I want to try him on the right. I'd want to try him in the midfield as a true midfielder. If we're going to stick with this system, this 4-2-3-1 system we've got, I want to see him on the right for a little while. But he's a good player. And I don't think we were wrong about our evaluation of him early in the season. I think he's been misused, and I want us to find better ways to use him so we can get more out of him.
Yeah, again, we keep talking about him being fatigued, perhaps overplayed, but I think more so than that is just how he's being used. My award for him was Don't Blunt the Lightsaber Award, because you're basically, by putting him on the left side of the pitch, you're completely discounting all his good abilities. When you pick a starting 11 and when you construct a squad, you have to get the best out of the team. And I think Segovia is the best when he's either on the right or centrally. And we have to use him there more. You use the word unimportant. He feels unimportant when he's on the left because he has to defer to Suarez and Messi. That's the perfect way to describe it. Go on.
When we're in our best 11 and Suarez and Messi are on the field, that's when he feels unimportant.
Exactly.
There have been plenty of times this season when either Suarez or Messi is out and he just comes alive. But the trio doesn't work as a trio.
And Segovia thrives on taking responsibility. The best he looks is when he's demanding the ball and then giving it off and then just moving around like a butterfly. That's what he was doing in the last 30 minutes of the game. And maybe that's one award that we can do, floating like a butterfly award, because he plays that way. And that's his play style.
So I will say, Miami King brings this up in the chat. He says, don't play Messi as the 10. Play Segovia there and then I guess move Messi to the right wing. I don't think that works because I still think you're going to have this clashing issue where Segovia likes to drift to his right and Messi likes to drift to his left. So I actually don't think that's the solution. If we want to try it, fine, but I don't think that's the way we want it to work. I see you making hand motions. So Messi on the right, Segovia centrally. I think they're going to drift into each other.
Yeah, but if Segovia likes to go to his right, Messi likes to go to his left, I think that just becomes Messi in the center, Segovia on the right. So
right.
It would work.
Once they overlap, it becomes that. But then you just,
but I think
just play that way.
Playing Segovia less as a 10, more as an 8 with Busi, I think might be a better option. But again, there's multiple ways that you need to try things out because there's no clear picture yet. But there's definitely something we saw yesterday that needs to be used more often.
Yes. Okay, final award. What you got for me?
I'm going to go for The Force is Strong with This One award.
The Force, relying on talent, is our metaphor here. Who's very talented and not shown it, or has shown it but hasn't shown it enough, so it needs to be mentioned that they have it in spades. I'm going to go with Yannick Bright because Javier Mascherano doesn't realize that he has so much force to his game.
The Force is Strong with This One award goes to Fafa Picault because the Force can be interpreted as talent. It can be interpreted as goals. It can be interpreted as veteran experience. I interpreted it as experience. Fafa Picault is a veteran of the MLS. He does not deserve to be sidelined and sitting on ice the way he has been. Every time he's on the pitch, he does something or the other that makes you think, that's so simple. Why didn't others do it? And he just finds ways of getting in good positions, and he's so reliable and he's just so dependable. And I think we need to use him more because the Force is strong with this one. And yesterday was the perfect example of how you let Fafa thrive. You allow him to use those channels and get into the space on the width side of the on the wide side of the pitch, and allow him to run the width because he has that ability to just beat players and get into good positions in the box as well. He had a goal, he had an assist, again, a contender for man of the match. I know we gave him the man of the Heron of the Match award on Twitter. So for me, I think Fafa was fantastic yesterday, and you need to use him more.
I don't think he's the best winger or one of the two best wingers on this team. I don't think he's one of the best strikers on this team. But
How
he's
many
a great.
wingers do we have outright?
Don't derail my point. He's the best soccer player. Not the best soccer. He's one of the best soccer players on this team. He's a great soccer player. He's going to find ways to get on the pitch and impact the game. And whether that's leading the line from the top and being pace, whether that's coming back, whether that's switching to the right on set pieces, coming back to the left, putting in crosses, trying to combine 1-2. He's just a good soccer player. And those are great things to have on your team. I don't think you need him to be a specific role to make everything work. I do think oftentimes we try and put people into sort of boxes into what they are as players. And I don't think Fafa fits into anything particularly well. I don't think he's like a particularly dynamic anything as a wide player. But he's just a really good soccer player, and he understands space, and he understands timing, and he understands how to have an impact. And that's what he does, as you said, every single game. He has an impact. I think this is a terrible award that you've given out, but
What?
he's a great person to give an award to.
The force is strong with this one. Is such a good award. And again, I don't want to get into the argument because, as we all know, I do tend to have the better awards and my creativity is a lot better than yours. So I can understand why you might be a little bit hamstrung in understanding some of these awards, but we'll let the chat decide who has the better awards, obviously. Let the public speak.
We'll continue this conversation off camera.
You do understand the reference, though, right?
Yes. We'll continue this conversation
You
off
probably
camera.
don't. You probably don't. Regardless.
Okay, so who do we got? Anyone else you want to talk about?
Thank you,
Suarez?
Upcode. There you go. The chat has spoken.
Hey, if it's applied to Lionel Messi, nothing's cringe. Yannick Bright was good. Played a long game without on a yellow card. Javier Mascherano mentioned something in the post game where he said that he doesn't think Yannick Bright can play 90 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, I will get the quote for you if you give me a half a second. He said that it's obvious Yannick Bright's impact. Here, I'll quote. This is a translation, obviously. Yannick is a very important player for this team. We saw him last season, how important he is for this team. We're working on his stamina to finish the match, but he's exhausted because he runs a lot. What?
Sack him.
What is going on with this coach?
Sack him. Sack him. This is sacrilege. How can you get on the mic and actually say that publicly? Makes no sense.
You see that? I
Yeah,
rapped
but
once, so I'm
once,
good.
right? Just because you rapped once doesn't mean.
I think it means I have more creativity than you.
There you go. I'll put one just for your reference.
Okay, so what do you think about that? You know, Yannick Bright, is he not playing more
That's
because
idiotic.
he can't handle it? Is
That
not,
is
that not
idiotic. He has an
absolutely silly?
engine of a bloody rhinoceros. He keeps going and going and going. Sometimes he gets tired, but 90% of the games, he's just a complete machine in the middle of the park. I don't know what he's talking about. Absolutely no idea. Maybe I'm watching a different game than Javier Mascherano is, because honestly, he has the coaching badges and he's the expert and professional here, and we're just getting on the mic and talking shit. So who knows?
All right, let's bring it back after
Yeah.
a little silliness. Listen, you know how you get 90 minutes fit? You play 90 minutes, and that last 15 minutes of running and sweating builds your endurance and your stamina. Taking him off every game doesn't
Exactly.
help him get.
Yeah, you gotta build conditioning and endurance by allowing your players to actually play those minutes where they're struggling a little bit, because that's how you technically get physical. Even then, I don't think that's an issue with Yannick Bright. That's definitely an issue with Redondo. That's maybe an issue with Segovia. I've never seen that as an issue with Yannick Bright. He is always ready to run through anybody, even in the 96th, 120th minute. He's that good. And his physicality has never been in question. So I don't know where that is coming from. Maybe we're misunderstanding the quote that Javier Mascherano is trying to say, but honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. The chat is on fire today. I applaud you guys because you're doing a fantastic job. Even though it derails our conversation a little bit, I
The chat
love
off for a second
I
just to
love
get my focus back.
just seeing what you guys write because it's hilarious. Keep going. Do not stop.
Ustari has a moment where he goes for a ball, doesn't get it, and he gets a foul called on the defender because they kind of crash into each other. I didn't think it was a foul. So a little bit of a nervy moment. He gets bailed out by the foul call. But other than that, I thought he was fine. Noah Allen, I thought this was a bounce back game. A little bit of a sour performance against Vancouver. He wasn't the only one, but
Difficult, yeah.
yeah. So bounce back for him. Suarez, who we didn't give an award to, I wouldn't be surprised if he scores 5 goals in the next 4 games now.
Yeah.
Nothing about the play style makes me think he's going to be tremendous, but also nothing about his play style makes me think he's going to be tremendous, and he just is tremendous. So it wouldn't surprise me if the streak was broken, and hopefully he's feeling good today after taking a knock, and he's good to go. Gonzalo Lujan. What is happening? Why is he playing so much? He was fine. It was his best performance. He did nothing spectacular, but he didn't screw up anything, so that made it his best performance. Then he goes over to right back, where that is just a real liability. What's going on with Gonzalo Lujan?
I mean, he's Javier Mascherano's guy, obviously, and he has some sort of evidence against Javier Mascherano because it feels like he's been blackmailing him. In all seriousness, he's Javier Mascherano's guy. That's who he trusts, and it looks like Mascherano's just decided that he's going to continue to play him regardless.
Yeah, I'm very nervous about Toto Aviles. I mentioned this at some point over the last couple of days where I think Toto Aviles is being played as a defensive midfielder just to get him minutes because he doesn't see Aviles getting minutes over Gonzalo Lujan. So I don't know what's going on there. That needs to change. That's all I have to say. Okay, I think we should end here as we lose it from the chat. Final thoughts on this game?
No, I think we said all that we had to say. This was a good bounce back win, a good victory for us. I've lost.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.